human rights not only was a chance to live in peace, but also to have a chance to live in a good home and to have a job and to have a modicum of education and to lead a healthy life, to be free of unnecessary diseases. The broadest possible range of human rights was our goal at the Carter Center.
Plains, Georgia. This tranquil, modest, small town is the hometown for the 39th President of the United States of America and one of the most globally influential advocates in peace and human rights. James Earl Jimmy Carter Jr. was born on October 1st, 1924 in Plains. His father, James Earl Carter Sr., was a peanut farmer. The world situation and conflicts facing Jimmy Carter in the early part of his life have cast tremendous impact on his destiny for the rest of his life.
That I consider the opportunity for a person to live in peace is a basic human right. My father was an officer in the First World War, and I was a submarine officer in the Second World War, and I was still in the Navy during the Korean War. And then when the Vietnam War came along, my oldest son was in Vietnam. My life has been affected adversely by the fact that people go into armed conflict. So when I became president, I made a very brief inaugural speech, and I said that while I was in the White House, that two of my goals would be to maintain peace and to promote and expand human rights.
On November 2nd, 1976, Jimmy Carter was elected president. From a small-town farm boy to a naval officer, to the governor of Georgia and to the president of the nation, Jimmy Carter's road to presidency is profoundly inspiring. Peace, human rights, equality and democracy have always been his highest priority. President Carter has been dedicated in making a difference to the world. He founded the Carter Center with his wife Rosalind in 1982 to continue working on issues in peace, health and human rights that were important to him in the White House.
Well, President Carter's mission inspires everything we do here at the Carter Center. He and Mrs. Carter founded the center 34 years ago to continue the important work he was doing in the White House and to focus on alleviating suffering among the world's poorest people.
So we still try to bring freedom to people through our election process and to promote a peace when war is threatened. We also deal with neglected tropical diseases, which with the accent on neglected, because these are diseases that afflict the poorest and most isolated and most suffering people on earth, primarily in Africa, but also some in Asia and Latin America. So to alleviate suffering and to avoid conflict among people has been the goal of the Carter Center since we established it.
Our best known example is guinea worm disease. Guinea worm disease is, I like to say, it's an assault on human dignity. None of us, no human being, should have to suffer this disease.
A neglected tropical disease, guinea worm disease is a crippling parasitic disease caused by the consumption of water contaminated with infected guinea worm larvae. After incubation in the body, female worms migrate onto the skin tissues and emerge after 10 to 14 months, leaving the infected person in agony.
Sometimes if a sufferer is young and the worm comes out, for instance, of a knee, a young man, for instance, and who's not fully grown, he can be crippled from having the worm emerge through a joint. And the tragedy is that you don't even become immune. You can get it every year, multiple worms for your entire life.
Well, we have been able to give medical treatments to more than 500 million people. And we have established at the Carter Center an organization known as the International Task Force on Disease Eradication. So we analyze every human illness to see which illnesses might be completely eliminated in a particular country or region or eradicated from the entire world. We call it counting down to zero.
And we seek to work with people who are neglected, with diseases that are neglected, and to make an impact where others don't care to try. In fact, President Carter says the only failure is not to try. And that means that we take on big challenges, challenges that other organizations often aren't interested in. And we try, this is an explicit principle that President Carter has given us, we try not to duplicate the effective efforts of others. We try to do something that others are not doing, so we reach people who really have no one else.
President Carter and the Carter Center have been striving in creating a world of peace. Throughout the years, the center has monitored more than 100 elections and carried out conflict resolution work across the globe. Programs and forums have taken place to defend human rights of those people whose voices are usually neglected.
President Carter really changed the conversation in two ways around women's rights. First, he said, it's not a women's issue, it's a human issue, but also it's a men's issue. As a prominent man, he could, and former president of the United States, step forward and really call to other men to become leaders and to embrace their responsibility for violence against women and girls. And what we do is really help in partnership with people in communities to lift up the opportunities, the potential of the community. And so we really believe in the power of people in partnership with us.
We can get people together who don't normally speak with each other. For instance, we just brokered a meeting in Liberia between the head of the Council of Traditional Tribal Chiefs and a UN official, which would not normally have taken place.
And I wanted to reach out and form a friendship with China. So one of my goals as a new president was to normalize diplomatic relations with China after 35 years of estrangement and sometimes conflict. And since 1979, when we established diplomatic relations, there have been no more conflict in the Western Pacific.
President Carter and the Carter Center's effort in promoting peace, equality, and defending human rights have brought hope to the less fortunate communities around the world. He was honored as the laureate of the inaugural LUI Che Woo Prize, Positive Energy Prize.
First of all, I'm very honored to be considered by this wonderful, benevolent man, and we will find that this gift will make it possible for the Carter Center to expand its own programs considerably.